What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Frame of Mind Inc. podcast. Today, I have a very special guest with me who's going to join me today. And we're talking about my brand new book, Letting Go of Baby 2 from a Father's Heart. We're going to get into some very good conversations today. So stick around, grab somebody, tell them to get on because it's going to be a very amazing and special show today because the Frame of Mind Inc. podcast starts right now. Get your mind right. Get your mind right. Get your mind right.
It's a frame of mind.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Frame of Mind Inc. podcast. This is your boy Simbawi Nibaye Jr., aka TK, and I am writing kind of solo today. My man Omar Williams, we call him O, is not going to be with us today. But before we get into all of that, y'all know what time it is. It's Affirmation Wednesday, and on Wednesdays, you know what we do. We do our affirmations and get them in and out the way, get our day started and going. And for any of you who are getting the replay of this, either video or audio, you can grab your paper, tablet, or whatever you use to write your affirmations down. If you got to memorize, that's cool too. At the same time, let's get this in and out the way. Affirmation any day it is, whether it's Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever day it is, whatever day time it is, it's affirmation that day. If you are ready, here we go. Today will be a good day. Today will be a great day. Today will be an awesome day. Today will be an amazing day. Today will be a phenomenal day. Today will be stress-free. Today will be a stress-less day. Today, I will overcome all barriers that want to block my progress. Today, all circumstances and issues and situations will line up in my favor. Today, I'll become better than who and what I was yesterday. I am a go-getter. I am victorious. I am triumphant. I am an overcomer. I never lose. I either win or I learn. I take authority over this day. I will conquer this day. I will dominate this day. And everything I have spoken into this day will happen as I have affirmed, because I am more than a conqueror. Let's get it popping. So today, I have a very special guest with me today who is not only my best friend, but is my wife. I have Tamar Nibaye here with me. Say hi to the people.
Hello.
As you can see, we're using one mic today. And those of you who can't see, we're using one mic. So I'll be backing away, leaning in, talking about letting go of baby from its entirety, from the standpoint of the series, which includes 3 books, my wife's 2 books, and my brand new book that's coming out. Well, actually, it's out today. The official release is today. And then talking about those books each individually, how they correlate together, and then our journey as husband and wife, as parents, and then also as a man, as a woman, and how we dealt with both of these situations differently from the male and female standpoint. Before I get started with this, I do want to say that I'm actually very excited about this podcast because I get to do it, number one, with my wife. Number two, is the release of my brand new book, Letting Go of Baby 2, from a Father's Heart. And we're looking to really speak to the fathers, particularly with my book, from a standpoint of just being able to start having that conversation, but also with us being here together. It's a couple thing. It's a husband and wife thing. It's a man and woman thing. It's a parent thing. And so it's the perspective that my wife's going to talk about today, coming with her 2 books. Just to introduce those, first of all, my wife wrote the first book, and I'll let her kind of elaborate on that, called Letting Go of Baby. And she wrote that book first. That came out in 2015. And then the follow-up was written by her and her best friend, who will be joining us in the show in just a few. It was called, What's Next? A Guide to Dealing with Grief After Loss. And so, without any further ado, I'm going to pretty much play host and guest. I'm going to ask my wife some questions. She's going to answer them. But first, I'm going to let her kind of just give her overall thoughts on the book. So just tell them, like, what brought this along as far as you writing the book, how it all came to be, and just what sparked this to go from being just a moment in your life to being something that you shared with many others, and particularly women, on a large scale by writing the first book, Letting Go of Baby.
Well, it kind of started as a dream that I had, and I was like, oh, in the dream, I was being interviewed by Oprah Winfrey, go figure, about my experience with baby loss. And of course, I'm not the only person in the world. Many, many women have experienced it, but in my dream, for some reason, she wanted to interview me regarding that, my experience. And I can't remember at what point or what was the tipping point where I said, wait a minute, it's a book. I can write my story down and I can get my story out and share it with other women. And then it kind of blossomed into the other women. Oh my goodness, they also have stories. And when you start to talk about it, you start to find out that you're not the only one. There are many who have gone through this, and some you don't even know about it. Some it happened so early during the pregnancy that they didn't really think much of it, or maybe they didn't feel like it was a big deal because it was so early, but it still is, and it still affected them in that manner. So the book isn't just my story. In the back of the book, there are stories, I believe, of 4 or 5 other women who went through baby loss, whether it was the babies were born and then passed away, or they delivered too early. It was early in their pregnancy, and how it affected them. And so that was my first journey, and then it was kind of on hold. I actually finished it in 2014, and it was on hold because I didn't know how to end it. Because by that time, when I started writing the book, I had a successful birth. I had one successful pregnancy, the third one, and then my daughter came, and I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to conclude the story. And so, actually, her hand is on the front cover of the book. She was helping me out with my cover. She didn't know it. She was still a baby at the time, but that was how I concluded the story of God blessing me with 2 children after 2 births, after 2 losses. So basically, he restored what I had lost. And so, but then it was like, it's not done yet. It doesn't end here. What's next? Like, we talk about it, people know about it, but how do I deal with it? And so that sparked the next book, Letting Go of Baby, What's Next? A Guide to Dealing with Grief After a Loss, because I didn't want to just tell people the story. People need to know what to do afterwards. And it's different for everyone, but I wanted to be able to give resources that people can turn to, whether natural, just general resources, or whether, spiritual resources. So, because it is a step, it is a process. And the process takes time. For some, it can take a shorter time, some it can take longer. And some relive it every year, especially when you've had a live birth and that time of year comes of their passing. Then you relive it again. And so you might have to exercise some of those strategies again. And it might be ways to memorialize the child. It can be a grown child, a baby. But I couldn't do it on my own because I am not a a counselor. I'm not licensed to be able to tell people the deep ins and outs of grief. So I pulled on my friend who, come to find out, she actually dealt with the same thing that I dealt with, and I didn't know it. Um, and so she actually is a licensed mental health counselor, and she was able to do the formal side of it, the clinical side of actual what is grief, how do we deal with grief. And then I started seeing what she was showing. Well, these are the 5 stages of grief, and this is what they look like and how we identify in it. And so we took those 3 stages, and she was early in her pregnancy. I was second trimester. And then I called on another friend who, she had a live birth. And so in What's Next, we actually talked about what it looked like for us in that stage. You know, stage 1 in grief might not look the same for the person who had a live birth as the person who lost the baby early in their pregnancy. And so,
well, I'm gonna do this. I want to take a step back to the first book before we move into your second one, because I have to do one thing, because I have to do an apology to some of the people who I've been guests on other podcasts as I've been promoting this book, and my wife let me know that I had a one detail that was a little off, and that detail was me saying that my wife began to journal her experiences with our miscarriage, and my wife's like, no, that's not what I did. So I wanted her to kind of clarify that. I apologize to the other podcast that I said that on. That was the only thing I messed up on. That was it. But everything else, total truth. So I wanted to tell on myself and then apologize for doing that at the same time. Okay.
But that's a strategy that you can use.
It is. So real quick, I want to hold the book up. So those of you who aren't getting video, you can't see this, but it's Letting Go of Baby, A Story of Never-Ending Faith After the Heartbreak of Miscarriage by Tamar Nibaye. That's just the back of the book there. This is out in 2015. And then, of course, you have the second book here, What's Next? A Guide to Dealing with Grief After Loss. And then, of course, the back of the book here as well. So before we move on, we're actually going to bring on another guest that we have today because, as my wife stated, she could not write the second book by herself. She had to call on someone who had more expertise in a medical or clinical field. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was literally a like last minute request before we did that. I want to bring on to the Frame of Mind podcast right now none other than Miss Keisha Sando, LMHC. I want to do it correctly. LMHC. Keisha, how are you tonight? Oh, I think you're on mute. Let's take you off. There we go. There we are.
You hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. No, I was saying I'm doing well and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So I'm going to let you just read just a quick, you want to do that before or after?
I can do it now.
Okay. Yeah, you read that real quick.
So Keisha has her own counseling. What's the technical term?
It's counseling practice. I have a
counseling practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's called Peacefield Mental Health Counseling Services, and it's based out of New York City. And you can find her information if you are in that area or Jersey, or right now they're offering virtual services right now. So you can check them out at www.peacefieldcscounselingservices.com. And you can also email them at info@peacefieldcs.com.
And we'll make sure that all that gets put in the podcast notes. So if you're taking notes, trying to write stuff down, don't worry about it. It'll be in the notes. Don't write your head over it. All right, we got you. All right. So Keisha, we wanted to bring you on because you are a co-author of What's Next, a guide to dealing with grief after loss. And so I'm gonna let you and Tamar just kind of bounce off each other of how, of course, my wife talked about how the book came along, but what role you played in this and how did that help you with your own situation? And then when you guys had the event in New York, like how that went as well, just kind of touch on those two things.
Okay.
So I think in talking to Keisha, she sparked the idea of giving people resources that they need to be able to deal with the grief. Not just leaving it as, tell your story, but what's next. And so I gave, some ideas and things that I used. But we needed some background because people didn't really know what emotions they were feeling and why and things like that. And Keisha had the expertise to be able to tell someone that and to be able to put it in book form. So if you wanted to quickly.
Yeah, I remember it's like when as you're talking about, I'm actually remember exactly like where I was, like when we had the conversation, and like what place I was at in my life at that time. And one of the things I remember bringing up was the fact that we needed to talk about the stages of grief. Because there's so many people that have experienced grief and are not talking about it. So that's the first thing. Of course, now with the pandemic and everything, I think just the idea and the concept of going through grief, people are starting to become more aware and sensitive to it. But even still, there's a different uh, expectation of how you're supposed to respond when you're grieving. So just like you talked about your experience, yours was in the later trimesters, but mine was like in the beginning. So your experience and even the way that you responded to it, I remember us talking about it was really different from my response to it, but it didn't mean that either one of ours was wrong in our response. So I think that's like the most important thing I remember us going through with the book. And to this day, I think it's still a very pivotal concept to talk about because people do need to understand that there are different stages of grief. In the book, we talk about Kubler-Ross's stages of grief. And, there's 5 stages that she basically kind of took hold on based upon her previous experience, her previous work experience. But there's so many other different variations of different stages of grief. But the main thing is to understand that you're going to go through different stages. Some people stay in like that first stage of like denial for a really long period of time. But then some people, like as soon as it happens, they're able to understand this is what it is. And then they start moving through the stages. But there's no right or wrong way to go through the stages. And then also, I remember also us putting in a book that you can go back and forth through the stages too. So you can have one day where you feel like you're doing well, you're kind of overcoming all of the feelings, that maybe the depression, the guilt, and all those other things that we talked about in the book. But then you have another day where you feel like you're back to the beginning. So I thought that was really important for us to include because people need to understand that so that they know that it's okay to go back and forth and to kind of have that roller coaster. It's natural, and that they're not alone in those experiences that they have.
So real quick, let's just talk about the event you guys had in New York. I remember that my wife's traveled up there. It was kind of like an all-day thing for her to come up there and be there. And if I'm not, just correct me if I'm wrong, there were about how many women were there? You remember that showed up?
Was it like 15?
Yeah, that's what I feel like. It was about 15. And we honestly, it was I don't feel like we had much time to prepare for that event. And I think we were even surprised by like the people that came and the responses that we received. I definitely know people said that we should have done it again, which probably we should. Maybe we can do do it all together now that this book is coming out as well. But I believe we had a really good response, and again, the people they felt supported. I remember that, like people feeling really supported, understanding that they were not the only one going through it. And then also it was like that sense of relief to be able to talk about something that they had been holding on to for so long.
And I think somebody was there, they actually had not gone through it, but they were interested in the topic and possibly like helping somebody who might have gone through it, getting information. But I think now that, this world of virtual has opened up, it probably would be easier to do another one, maybe do it virtually.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Or you could do both. You could have a live event and then you could stream the event. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
a lot,
true.
a lot of ways that you can do it now.
That is true. Yeah, the world is
If
opening up.
I'm not mistaken, is there one guy that showed up to you guys' event that one time?
there was a dad. Yeah.
There was a dad. So for me, when I heard that, that kind of was like the first spark
Mm-hmm.
in writing my book. Now I'm not gonna get to that yet. I'm gonna talk about that in the second half, but that was like my first spark. That there was one father that showed up amongst the women that were there.
Right.
And I'm like, that to me, that was like, that's not normal for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very it was very inspiring to me in the start of me writing my book. So before we kind of move into the second half of this, I want to ask Keisha, if
Mm-hmm.
you don't mind, just dropping just some general knowledge on our audience concerning, grief and loss, and how it's important to talk about those things and to not hold them inside. Because now that we have you here, and this
Mm-hmm.
is your practice, what you do on a daily basis, your practice. Can you just drop some general knowledge on the audience, just to let them know from a clinical standpoint, as a professional, how important that is?
Right. I mean, it's extremely important. I think I probably would start off by just talking about what some people experience in terms of symptoms, like clinical symptoms, when they are actually when they're experiencing grief. Like, so I've noticed in my experience, in my own experience, as well as clinically, when I'm meeting with my clients, we have people that are experiencing like crying. And so what some people will explain is that, I just cry for no reason. They say, I'm crying for no reason. I don't understand what's happening. Out of the blue, I'll just start crying. Or some people will say that they've been dealing with anxiety, and they're not really sure what's going on. They just feel nervous about it, feel like something bad is going to happen. So really, it's just the idea of becoming more in tune with yourself. And that's the first thing I would say, because when you're dealing with grief, like we talked about the different stages, but with the stages also come the symptoms, the way that we're behaving, the way that we communicate, or really the lack thereof. Sometimes people, when they're going through grief, they may put on a front like nothing's wrong. And that's not necessarily normal either. So when you see, or if you've noticed yourself kind of going from one extreme to the other, or you feel like you're on one extreme to the other, it doesn't really mean necessarily that you are at that level that someone else is saying, but I think it does it gets you to a point where you should at least assess and kind of really think about, like, what is happening with me? What are some of those thoughts? Because I'm a big believer that, like, our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions are all related. So if you notice that you're crying, if you notice that whenever someone is talking about, we're talking about a baby. So whenever someone has either just had a baby, or maybe pregnant, or talks about a loss, if you start to notice that you're having some symptoms or some types of thoughts or something within you that makes you feel uncomfortable, then there might be something there that you need to really kind of evaluate and kind of look into, talk about it. So that's the first thing, just really being observant about what you are thinking and how you are feeling. And the first, like people say, like being honest with yourself is like the beginning in terms of like working on making yourself a little bit better. But I would say that's probably one of the most important things, because it can impact our lives. Dealing with grief can impact our daily functioning. I've seen it where people can't go to work, or if they're at work, they're easily agitated. These are all reasons why, if you are grieving, it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to talk about it, because you're not alone. There's a lot of people that are going through the same things that you're going through. And that there's strategies, there's techniques and things that you can use. Like Tamara said about journaling. I love journaling. Journaling is like one of the main things that I use as well, because you don't have to worry about what anybody else says, or how anybody responds to how you're feeling about it. You could just put everything out there. And if you really don't feel comfortable with it, write it out and then throw it away. But at least you get it out. So I would definitely say, if you are grieving, be honest with yourself with what you're going through, and be open to the ideas of working through it. And you don't have to do this alone.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Keisha, for your awesome expertise and for joining us on such short notice. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
No
Thank you very
problem.
much. And again, we're going to have all her information in the podcast notes. So, You don't worry. We will make sure that you guys get that. Thank you very much for joining us, Keisha, and we will
Oh,
talk
no
to you
problem.
soon
All right.
about that virtual event.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. So we'll take a quick break here, and we will come back again. In the second half, we'll talk about Letting Go of Baby 2, my book, and maybe my wife has some questions for me. And if not, I have questions already that I can answer, and we'll come back and we'll do that. So, Frame of Mind Inc. Podcast. Be right back in just a moment. Are you looking for an apparel company that's positive, uplifting, and truly cares about you? Then look no further. Frame of Mind Inc., an apparel brand company, impresses on individuals to think positive thoughts, say positive things, and do positive deeds. Get positive apparel, such as t-shirts, hoodies, and wristbands for children, teens, and adults in various colors and sizes. Customized services include logo and t-shirt design, screen printing, and embroidery for individuals, families, schools, profit, and nonprofit organizations. You can reach Frame of Mind Inc. at 302-689-3499 or visit their website at www.frameofmindinc.com. Frame of Mind Inc. Think it, speak it, achieve it.
It's a frame of mind.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Before we left, we were talking about my wife's books, Letting Go of Baby, the original book that came out in 2015, and then What's Next, A Guide to Dealing with Grief After a Loss, which came out in 2017, I believe, which was the follow-up. It was written by her and her best friend, Keisha Sando, who is a licensed counselor. And so right now we're going to get into Letting Go of Baby 2, From a Father's Heart, which is my book that I wrote. And today is the official release date of Letting Go of Baby 2. It's been in pre-order phase for about 3.5 weeks now, almost a month, I would say. And so now we are official in release stage. So first of all, I want to say thank you to all of those out there who have pre-ordered your books. They will be on the way. At the same time, thank you for all those who have supported over the past 3 weeks, 3.5, 4 weeks, and who will continue to support as we move into the distribution phase of the book. So I'm going to start off by saying that based on our first half of our program, I talked about how the one male, the one father that came to their event in New York kind of was a bit of a spark for me to kind of think about writing the male version of the book. At that time, it was really just more of a thought. It wasn't like I had, an epiphany, or it was like, God said, hey, write the book. It was just kind of like a small little thought. And I kind of just, it came and it kind of went, but it was like the very first, light that came on. And as time went on, I actually saw how my wife's book had a positive and inspiring effect on other women who read it. The event they had in New York, that was very inspiring. And then how it just continued over the next, couple years to help and inspire women as well. And so I actually started writing Letting Go of Baby 2 in 2017 after the second book came out that my wife and Keisha wrote. And I started it. And what I did was I just on Google Drive, I just started talking it out. And I said, I'll fix up the mistakes later. I'll talk it out now, deal with it later. And I probably got through about half the book in that 1 year alone. And then, as I said on other, shows I've been on, that, life started to happen, things started to happen, and, life happens, and we get that. But it started to become something I kind of put on the shelf. And even though I had reminders in my phone about when I was going to work on it, what I was going to do, I kind of ignored those because life was kind of happening. And every now and then I would kind of dab into it, do some things. And then eventually it just became something I put on the back burner altogether. And fast forward to I would say the past year, I would say we end up talking to a couple that ended up going through a miscarriage themselves, and friends of ours, and husband and wife. And we were talking with them one evening, and I got a chance to hear the father side of things as I began to open up to him about, what I was dealing with. And he began to open up to us about how he felt about things. And after that conversation that we had, it was as if, Elohim said, all right, it's time to finish the book. It's like, it's been on the back burner long enough. It's time to finish. And that was the driving force for me to finish the book that I already had about halfway to 3/4 of the way done, without any edits or anything like that. And so it went from me working on it probably, once a week to about, a few days a week. And then it became just every day, with the exception of maybe, a Sunday, where I would work on something on the book to get it done until it came to completion. And so this book here, it's my extreme hope that men will begin to have the conversations around baby loss. And I say that because we can talk about loss in general, but when it comes to baby loss, whether, a miscarriage or even, if the baby is born and then maybe passes, that you very rarely, if at all, hear from the father. It's always a perspective from the mother. And rightly so, because they're the ones that the connection between the mother and a child is a connection that's extremely special. The mother carries this child for 9 months. And in today's world, it's 10 months. I'm not sure where they got that from, but that's another story. Anyway, 9-10 months, you're carrying this child, this baby inside of you. They are a part of you. They're a part of your everyday life. The uncomfortable times, the comfortable times, the hot times, if you happen to get cold or whatever your body does. And then to have this life form inside of you and then know that life form is no longer there, no longer is alive, that's very devastating. And that's something that as a man, I will never understand. I can only understand it by, again, talking to another mother about it, reading about it in a book, as my wife did, or because you see this stuff, on TV, you hear about it, other people have dealt with it, but you never necessarily think it's going to happen to you or know it's going to happen to you until it does. And so for me, as a man, as a male and a husband and soon to be father, I found myself really just kind of bottling everything up. I didn't really address it, didn't really say anything about it. And my main concern was my wife, because I wanted to be there for her. I wanted to be strong for her, because this is something that, in my mind, like, she's dealing with this. Not necessarily me, but she's dealing with it. But as a husband and wife, you're one and you deal with things together. Now, one may grieve differently than the other, but you're both dealing with it one way or the other. And for me, I didn't realize I was dealing with it until one day it just kind of hit me. And I didn't realize how much it was it made me feel until one day I just kind of broke down and didn't know that would be the moment that I realized, wow, this really affected me as much as it affected her. And to the large degree, it will affect the mother more because of the relationship that they have with the baby. But I think in men being able to talk about this, being able to build community around this, being able to deal with, heal from, and be free of this moment in time in their lives is highly important, because as men, we're taught on a large general scale to, suck it up, and just, you got to be strong. You can't show weakness, and you got to, and everything is just kind of suppressed. And what happens is, over time, as other things begin to happen in your life, the things we suppress eventually will come to the surface. And I've mentioned this a lot, that if you have a soda can or a soda bottle and you shake that soda can and soda bottle up and then you open it, whatever and whoever is in the vicinity is going to get soda on them, because it's going to come out like a volcano erupted. And what happens is, as men, when we do that and we lash out like that, it doesn't just affect us, it affects all those who are connected to us, our spouses, our children, our co-workers, our parents who raised us, and those who we are, our families and friends, anybody who's connected to you in any kind of way. It affects them greatly. And so this book, I'm gonna hold it up here. Those of you who don't have the video, you can't see, but it says "Letting Go of Baby 2 from a Father's Heart" by yours truly. This is the back of the book here. And this one quote that I have, it says, "We tend to forget that not only did the woman or the mother lose a child, but the man, father, did too." And so I'm not just proud of this book because I wrote it. I'm proud of the book because of what it can do to help us as men begin to talk about our feelings and our emotions in a positive way, in a healing way, because most of us as men, we don't talk about those feelings and those emotions because it's kind of like a weak moment for us. No, we're taught not to be weak and not to, you got to be strong. You got to be a man about it. Well, what does that mean, to be a man about it? Well, as men, we have feelings and emotions too, just like women do. My wife has emotions and feelings. I have emotions and feelings. The Creator gave them to us to use and express, but we're to use and express them in a healthy and positive way. And for us as men, when we suppress those feelings and emotions, we're not using them in a healthy and positive way. It will hurt us, and it will hurt others as time goes on. And so the book is not a super long read. It's not a short read either. When I was writing this book, I kind of wanted to make sure the book wasn't too long, but wasn't also too short, to where I put the most important parts of the journey in this book so that men can read it without having to sit there and read for a super long time, or to read something that's too short that didn't really give them the meat of it. And so I really believe that Elohim gave me what he wanted me to put in this book. This book is an open book. It's an open book to me. It's open about my emotions, my feelings, the questions I had, the inadequacies that I experienced, the guilt, the guilt trails that I took, the blame and shame that I dealt with. I was very upset and angry, with Elohim about why did he allow this to happen to us, and what was so wrong, and question after question after question. You'll see those in the book as well. To also see, the real emotion and real feelings that came from me as a man, to say, this is how I'm feeling right now, and I really do want to understand what's going on. And so before I go any further, I do want to ask my wife if you have any questions you want to ask me while I'm talking here.
I don't have any questions, but I'm proud of you for finishing the book,
Well, thank you, baby.
because the men do need to know that they have a way to express them, and they can express themselves and show that vulnerability. That vulnerability is not a weakness; it's actually a strength, that we see that you are willing to be vulnerable in that moment. But I thank you for being there for me during that time. I mean, I can just remember one of those evenings where I was just so upset. He just ran me a bath, and I went and got in a bath, and I just, sat there. He didn't say words to try to make it better. It was action behind it. So those fathers out there, sometimes you don't need to say anything, but what you do to support her speaks more volumes, because sometimes there is not the right word to say, and a lot of times you can only say the wrong thing when somebody's really in those stages of grief. Yeah. So just your actions and what you do, sitting next to them quietly, holding, those little things are helpful. So thank you for being a great husband.
Well, thank you, babe. And I'm going to piggyback off that, because that was part of the inadequacy that I dealt with. As men, we're created to conquer, and we're providers, and we're protectors, and all that stuff. And what my wife was experiencing, I realized that no matter what I did or how hard I tried, I couldn't fix it. And that was hard for me. I'm like, I'm her husband. I'm, the man of the house, and I'm this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I can't fix this. And that became hard for me to deal with. And I started, again, added more questions to the equation about me as a man, or about my manhood, about me. Am I worthy of being a father? Am I worthy of being a husband? That I can't fix this. And so that was, and I'll give you guys a little, exploration into the book. Chapter 3 is a very key part of the book. It's actually the longest chapter in the book. And it's very key because there's a lot that goes on. in chapter 3 that kind of really leads you into the rest of the book, and so chapter 3 was a very important part of the book for me. And I actually didn't plan on it being that long, but as I was writing it, just more thoughts came to mind. I started reliving the moment as I was writing it. And then I started reading it, and I'm like, wow, I didn't know I felt like this. I didn't know I was dealing with this. I didn't know that I was acting like this towards other people. I was acting like this, just in quiet times by myself, and it began to really open me up more to, as I begin to finish the book, I'm like, I need to be a little more open, a little more transparent. Now, I may not tell you every little, intricate detail, but there are enough details in this book for you to see that I'm an open book, when you read this. And it's hard for men to be an open book, just in general. Sometimes there people can say that, you can be too sensitive, or you're not being sensitive enough, or you're not being strong enough, or you're being too weak. And there's that fine line where you learn to understand when to be what you need to be in that moment. And I'm so thankful to my father. I want to give a shout out to him, who taught me, how to be a man, when to be strong, and when to, to stand my ground, but then also to know that, hey, when things happen and you have those feelings and emotions, like, express them, but express them in a healthy way, And the last thing I do want to say before we kind of wrap this up to the men out there, you need to make sure that you surround yourself with other men who are not going to judge you when you do get to that point or to that moment. And I say that very, 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 I'm very concerned when I say that, because as men, we need to make sure we're surrounding ourselves with other men who are going to allow you to be vulnerable, but then lift you up and not make that vulnerability, something that brings you down even more, to try to make you feel less of a man, or to feel less of a husband, or less of a father. And I've seen it with my own eyes. I've witnessed it. I've heard about it. I've talked to other men about it. So your tight-knit circle in your personal life should be just as important to you as your tight-knit circle in your business life, or your career, or your job. There's certain circles that you want to have where you are comfortable in that circle, to also have men who are not going to judge you, but men that will also be there to help correct you in a loving way as well. And so that's my final piece to it. I do want to say this before we kind of end this out. Of course, the book is out and available officially today, July 20th. Coincidentally, and this was almost done on purpose, our 15-year anniversary is tomorrow. July 21st, 15 years of marriage, 2 children. And so when we kind of made the date to do this, I'm like, oh, our anniversary to be the following day. I'm like, this is really fitting. And so I want to say publicly, happy pre-anniversary to you, baby. We're looking forward to another 15 years as well. As far as the books go, you can get all the books, if you like to, online. If you go to my website at simbawi.com, you can go get all 3 books. Get them separately. You can get them all together. So you can get all the books separately, or you can get the series. The series is online. It's called the Letting Go of Baby 3-book series. You can get all 3 books at one time, pay a one-time price. Or if you want to, bless someone, if you know another father who has gone through this with their wife, get this as a gift for them and give it to them. If you know a couple that's gone through this and you want to be a blessing to them, and get the series for them, let them be able to read this together, so that, us as men can understand it from the woman's side, and that the women can understand it from the male side. It's also good for group reading. If you want to have a small group and you want to talk about, you want to have, some sort of group to talk about this. It's also great as well in groups. So there's a number of different things that you guys can do here as far as purchasing these books. I want to say thank you again to all those who pre-ordered, all those who have given words of encouragement and who have just been a blessing to us over the past 15 years of almost 15 years of our married life, who have poured into us and who have helped us become who we are today, right now, present day, and who we're going to become as well. I'm trying to make sure I'm not forgetting anything, but is there anything else you want to say before we go?
Nope.
You sure?
Okay.
As you can see, I'm the talker and she's not. But it was a pleasure doing this podcast with my wife. I love her dearly. Our children love them dearly. And all those who are a part of our tight-knit circle and those who are on the outer layers of the circle. We did a podcast on that. Go check that out. Your inner circle and your outer circle should be just as important as your inner circle. Thank you so much. All those who are attending live, thank you. I want to say a big thank you for those who commented here on Facebook. Monique Smith-Gadsden, Latanya, Congo. Thank you so much for commenting, guys. And again, you can go to Simbawi.com, get your single books or your book series of Letting Go and Baby. Thank you so much. We will see you guys again next week. We will have another great, awesome podcast for you guys. And it's been great. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much. Continue to think it, speak it, and achieve it. And as always, until next time, hey, I holla. Thank you for joining the Frame of Mind Inc. podcast. And as always, here at Frame of Mind Inc., think positive thoughts, say positive things, and do positive deeds. As our tagline says, think it, speak it, achieve it. See you next time.
It's a frame of mind. It's what you say and what you do.
Don't forget to check us out on the web at www.frameofmindinc.com, where you can browse our online apparel store, listen to some of our original music and production services, as well as view our videos and projects we've done for our clients and customers.